Mark, thank you ever so much for joining us on the podcast today. Lovely to have you.
My pleasure. Absolutely delighted to be a guest on someone's podcast for a change.
Well, is this the first time?
No, I've done a few, but I always love it. It's great because I don't have to
Podcast
edit
meets
afterwards.
podcaster.
Exactly.
And then you don't have to do any editing afterwards,
Yeah.
as you say. Well, welcome to the podcast. Our series this season is Are You the Perfect Parent? And I don't usually give people much of a chance to come in and chill out or kind of ease people in. I just go straight in there, Mark, with Mark, are you the perfect parent?
Has anyone actually said yes to that, by the
Yes, they
way?
have, and then
Because I would,
laughed
yeah, because they're
hysterically.
not serious. I think I'd be deeply suspicious of anyone who says, yeah, I'm absolutely the perfect parent, because I don't think it's possible to be perfect, is it? I think it's important to make mistakes because you learn from mistakes. So if
Absolutely.
you think you're nailing it every time, I don't think you're reflecting enough, and you're not learning enough to grow as a parent. And as a parent of neurodivergent kids, there are curveballs all the time.
Yeah.
Like, you have to constantly adapt and update your information, not just for to accommodate neurodiversity as a whole, but for each of your kids as well. Because,
Yeah.
I've got three kids and their profiles are all totally different. So I'm learning day by day. So no, I am not the perfect parent. I can confidently say that I'm one of the top two parents they have.
I like that. I like that. That's great.
um, I've learned, and I am pretty good at now understanding the limitations of what we're working with, and
Yeah.
what their challenges are, and changing my approaches to do what suits us rather than how I feel like I'm supposed to parent.
And that's the
Um,
important bit, isn't it? Is that there's this thing out there about how you should parent. What is this perfect
mhm.
parent? And
Yeah.
actually, our kids do not fit that. They weren't given the memo
No,
about these
absolutely. And
this
in the early
perfect
days,
parenting.
you sort of look at that and go, my kids are not doing any of this
Yeah.
stuff. They're supposed to be standing in naughty corner
Yeah.
and then learning from this lesson. But no, I think as a metaphor, if you'll permit me, I think
Go
that
for
like
it.
parenting my kids is like having to cook a family meal the day before a big food shop. Right, so
Okay.
you might not have all the ingredients that you want to be working with, but this is what you've got.
Yep.
And in order to cook up a sumptuous feast that will appeal to everyone, you've got to improvise, right?
Yep.
You've got to change your expectations. This is not going to be a banquet. We're just going to get everyone fed and happy with what we have. And I think I've become phenomenal at being able to improvise and cobble something together that is vaguely appetizing. It's not to everyone's taste, certainly not to neurotypical parents' tastes, but that's not my business. And you
Yep.
know what? How they view my parenting or the way that I cobble together a meal is not really a concern of mine. It works for us, and I don't know if that is stretching the metaphor too much there, but
No, I think that's a perfect metaphor.
you've got to
It's a,
deal with what you've got.
yeah, it's what you've got to deal with, isn't it? And as you say, if you things change all the time, and I think you kind of alluded it to earlier when you first started to talk about it, was that actually when you think you've got it now with one kid, the
Hmm.
next one it doesn't work.
Yeah, never get complacent.
Oh
That's
yeah,
that's that's one
stay
thing
on
I've
your
learned.
toes.
I go, yeah, no, everything is a phase, the
So,
good and the bad.
Mark, tell us a bit about your family then, and kind of who's in your family, what kind of diagnoses, if any, have you got in your family?
I am surrounded by neurodivergence.
Yes.
So I have three children. I've got Jay, who is 11, and he's diagnosed autistic ADHD.
Yep.
Um, I've also got Otto, who is 9, also diagnosed autistic ADHD, but with a wildly different profile. He's much more
Okay.
anxiety based
Yeah.
than Jay. Uh, Jay is to all intents and purposes PDA. I don't think you get a diagnosis for that, but I know a lot about PDA now, and he definitely ticks all those boxes. And
Okay.
then I've got India, who's my daughter, who's 7, is also recently diagnosed autistic, almost certainly ADHD. We're just starting that knobbly pathway now. And also, I strongly suspect has a PDA profile as well. My former partner, the kid's mum, is Tam, also last year was diagnosed autistic ADHD. So
Okay.
I am the lone neurotypical crouton bobbing about in a spicy soup of neurodivergency in my household.
I love that description.
Um,
And so it sounds like, so in a very short space of time, you've had a lot of diagnoses in your family.
yeah, there's been a lot to recalibrate. I think is the best way of describing
Absolutely.
that. Of going,
Yeah.
and when you think, oh, I think I know what autism is. Oh, then this person's autistic as well, and that's totally different. And okay, but surely this one's not autistic. Oh, they're autistic ADHD as well, but it's a totally different thing. And so I'm finding myself having to just learn more and more about how it
Yeah, yeah,
presents
yeah.
and how to accommodate them, and it's all fun.
How have you done that, Mark? How have you found, how did you
What are
find
the
your
alternatives?
information? Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, well, I am. I like to know as much information as I can. Anyway, just with anything, I'm a
Okay.
researcher and a fact finder.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of reading about it and a lot of understanding about it. And found local neurodivergency communities because a lot of what I pick up in terms of strategies doesn't come from the books very often, with the exception of one that I'll mention in a little bit. But it comes from other people and
Yeah.
understanding what works for them and sharing anecdotes and stories. And um, it's really important to realize that you're not the only one going through this.
Mm.
And it's sometimes it can feel like that. Well, a lot of the time it can feel like that when you look across the school playground and you see all of the neurotypicals, behaving in a certain way, and yours are like up a tree or you know, like trying talking to a bin. I've had that recently. It's all of this. You're like, my kids are different. So you feel a little bit isolated. So
Yeah.
finding that neurodivergent community, the community of neurodivergent parents,
Yeah.
has been amazing because then I feel like everyone's got everyone's back, going,
Mm.
that you can put a question out there and go, look, I'm really struggling with this. And someone will go, yep, had that, been there. This is what worked for me. You might want to try this. And that's much more valuable and targeted than just looking at the whole of information out there on neurodivergency.
Mm. And I think what's interesting for me is that when we talked before, is that you talked about setting up your own podcast because obviously Mark has his own podcast. It's called Neuroshambles. It's a great podcast. But as part of your conversations on there and the people that you have on there, I suppose I'm interested a little bit about where your idea for Neurosamples came from. Where did that come from? Was that a kind of a wanting to learn more?
I don't think primarily it was about wanting to learn more. Though that has been an amazing offshoot of it, is that because I talked to loads of different guests from all different
Yeah.
areas, lots of professionals and just parents on the front line and lots of experts, and I've learned so much just from that. Like I
Mm.
say, tapping into the neurodivergent parenting community, so that has been amazing, but that wasn't why I started it. I think I started it because I did, when I was in the research phase of all of this, I wanted to know more about autism and ADHD and how that presents. And there are a lot of books out there and there are a lot of podcasts out there, but all of the podcasts I listened to were really bit serious and
Yeah.
um and felt like I was being given homework. I was like, oh, here's some other things, other strategies that I'm failing to implement or that I haven't tried. And what I wasn't getting was the sort of the human aspect of that, of like, it's so hard to get my kids out of the door. I can't be the only one going through this. And I know that neurotypicals have problems getting their kids to put their shoes on, but this is next level.
Yeah.
And I wanted to hear, I wanted to find other people to share that with. And I wanted to hear other people's stories and what they're going through because I was feeling pretty isolated. I'll be honest, I felt
Yeah.
quite lonely. And um, rather than just listening to professionals saying, here are the strategies, I wanted to listen to other parents going, oh my God, it's really hard, isn't it?
Yeah. And sometimes
Because
it is, it's not what it's about it being fixed or making it different or changing it, is it? It's about, as you say, just being alongside somebody else that goes, this is really hard.
yeah, absolutely. I think that was the Yeah, and I wasn't really getting that from Tam, is my partner at the time, because Tam is neurodivergent, so doesn't really reflect on stuff.
Okay.
Because Tam has alexithymia, which I don't know if your listeners are familiar with, but it's basically an inability to kind of perceive and interpret your own emotions.
Yeah.
So I'm there so going, well, look at this, it's really hard, and oh, here's how I feel about it. And Tam didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Tam just
Yeah.
heard me moaning and sort of shut it down. I was like, well, I need to share this with someone.
Yeah.
So I started a podcast because why not?
Yeah. Let's tell the whole world.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's and we're now, 35 episodes in.
Yeah.
And it's just been wonderful for me, like just as an outlet and as a resource for other people. I think
Yeah.
it's just been it feels a bit wanky saying it's a resource. It's not. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's because I'm not giving you lessons. I'm not an expert, but I have been through a lot
Yeah.
with my kids, and I'm talking to other people who've been through a lot with their kids. And I think just knowing people out there are going through similar stuff is really valid and really important.
I think it's huge. I think your podcast is really relatable. So people, they hear it. It's raw. It's real. People say it how it is. There's, and I think what does it for me as well is the humour side of it. Because actually, I think when we're in the trenches and things get bad, sometimes humour can be that saving grace for us.
Yeah, yeah,
That we
absolutely.
have to, we laugh.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever met one parent of neurodivergent kids who doesn't have this dark humor, but you can't bust that out on neurotypicals because
Yeah.
they don't know how to react,
Yeah.
right? Whereas if you're talking to another parent of neurodivergent kid, if you're talking to another parent of neurodivergent kids and you sort of make a slightly off color joke,
Yeah.
or you kind of share something that is, you're probably oversharing sometimes, they know what to do with that, which is
Yeah.
just laugh at it and treat it as it is instead of
Yeah.
going, oh, I'm really sorry.
Yeah. And it just helps, I think, take the impact out of it, doesn't it? And I
Mm,
think life can be tough enough as it is. And I think sometimes we need to find a way that we can have a laugh
yeah,
because humour has a huge impact on people's emotional health and well-being and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
know I get that from when I listen to your podcast. They make me smile.
Oh, thank you.
They're funny, the anecdotes that you have, but also the people that come on. And it's sometimes as well, that's a relief to hear that, I think.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully.
So in your parenting, I don't like the word career or path
Career, I
or
like it.
yeah,
Career
but your
journey,
experience, Mark.
odyssey.
Yeah. You've talked about some curveballs and how kind of things might have been a bit different along the
Mm.
way. Kind of what's been your biggest learning curve for being on your parenting experience?
I think. Well, I think in the early days, everyone goes through this process of trying to parent their kids in the way that other people parent their kids.
Yeah.
If you've got neurodivergent kids, there are things that are passed on from other generations. There are things, there are more up to date versions of parenting that you practice and that you try out. And I don't know where it comes from because I don't think everyone reads parenting books in that way, but it sort of is picked up socially, I think, or maybe by osmosis, um, just by being around neurotypicals. And I was trying all of that,
Yeah.
and I wasn't getting the results that I was expecting. And I was getting very, very frustrated by that because I would try parenting in the way that I was parented, which
Yeah.
was essentially, that my dad was quite a shouty dad, and so there was, an element of, well, he's just shouted, so I'm going to do exactly what he wants, and I did that. I think, that I'm not proud of it, but I tried parenting in that way, and actually, it just made things worse, and it made me feel bad, and it dysregulated
Yeah.
Jay, and it was not working, and I sort of got to this crisis point. I think that my relationship with Jay was at rock bottom because I saw him as naughty. I
Yeah.
saw him as defiant, and that and I was working really hard at it as well. So it's like I'm not a lazy parent. I'm really
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
put in the research and the strategies. I'm doing everything I can, and it's not working. And he's just defiant. He's just naughty. And sort of back to what I was saying about the neurodivergent community, there was a Facebook group, a local Facebook group of neurodivergent parents, and one day, just exasperated, I put a post on there going, I just don't know what to do with my child who's so defiant. I think he's got ODD. So that was, shows how little I knew back in those days. Saw it as oppositional defiance.
Yeah.
Has anyone got anything they can recommend? And straight away, within 2 minutes, someone came back and said, the explosive child worked for us.
Yeah. That's
Which
Ross Green, isn't it?
yeah, it is. I didn't
Yeah.
know that at the time. It sounded a bit drastic as a
Yeah.
as a measure.
Bit
But
far.
yeah, yeah. So I was like, oh, interesting. Okay. So I ordered that
Yeah.
and I read it, and it completely changed my perspective of my child's understanding of the world.
Yeah.
And that was a game changer for me. That was the single biggest thing that changed for me, because I read it, and there's lots in there. If you haven't read it, and you find yourself being exasperated by what you perceive as challenging behavior from your child,
Mm.
read it. um because it kind of reframes it, and the key principles are that all children want to succeed, and sort of they're not upsetting you or defying your expectations just because they're being a dick,
Yeah.
just because they want to.
Yeah.
It's that they're failing to meet your expectations.
Yeah.
And when you learn that, you can understand that actually it's your expectations that need to
Mm.
change, not
Mm.
the child, because they're not able to do that yet. They
Mm.
might do over time, but they're just doing things in their own pace at their own time, and they're not ready for that yet. Um, and that made a massive difference, because I could see that Jay's behavior was, because when you think that someone's deliberately being defiant, of course it rubs you up the wrong way. You're
Of
like,
course
I'm
it
the
does.
parent, you're the child, this is how
Yeah.
it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um and so that reading that book was a massive shift for me, in terms of I could be a lot more patient, a lot more understanding.
Mm.
And there's this list of, have you read the book?
I'm not a massive reader, so I dip in
Okay.
and out of stuff. But
No,
yes, yes, I've
I'm
read
I'm
bits
not
of
either,
it.
to be honest. A lot of audiobooks,
Yes.
but this one I did read, and I'm very glad I did, because one of the things it does is it gives you a list of lagging skills. These are
Okay.
basically things that your child might not be able to do yet, and it asks you to rate them on how well they're able to do this, and from like 1 to 5, I think it is, something like that.
Yeah.
And it's a list of like 30 or 40 different things, and I went through it and I sort of rated it, and I realized that he was struggling with, like, I would think 90-95% of them.
Wow.
And
Okay.
I was like, whoa, what I perceive that my child is able to do is way off where he
Yeah.
is. um and it really helped me to kind of understand where he is and meet him where he's at, rather than trying to drag him up to where
Yeah.
I want him to be,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think. And reading that list and going, neurotypical kids don't have problems with any of this.
Mm.
That was the big thing as well. It's like, if I gave that to a friend of mine who's got a neurotypical kid, they would be low on pretty much all of them. They might have one or two
Yeah.
that they're not quite there yet, but the vast majority of them are just sort of easy for them. They're picked
Yeah.
up by osmosis. They're
Yeah.
just picked up, as part of their development. Uh, so yeah, that was a big change for me, was reading that book.
And I think that he also talks, doesn't he, Ross Green, is about that kids do well when they can do well.
Hmm.
And I've done some posts in the past about flipping that also to parents, that parents will do well when they can do well.
Yeah,
So sometimes we, have a lot of, I mean, a bit like you were saying, it's just kind of, I didn't know. And we only know what we know.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And when we know more, then we can do better. But I like that way of looking at kind of behavior in particular, and behavior is another one of my areas that I get very excited about and
Hmm.
talk lots about. But it's almost like as a parent, that's what we can, those things we need to learn somewhere, because actually you could probably apply that to a lot of kids, thinking about, kids will do well when they can do well.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
So if they're not doing well, then what's going on? You have to look deeper than just the
Yeah, it's
behavior
that
that you see
all
on the
all behavior is
surface.
communication, right?
Yeah,
It's that one that they're the way they're behaving is they're communicating something, and typically it's they're communicating, I can't do this.
yeah, yeah. And this is too much.
And
Yeah.
then you have
And
to
it's
change your expectations.
absolutely. And that's hard, I think, if that's not been your experience, that's not been the way that you've been parented, or it's not
Mm.
the way that you come across how to perfectly parent your child. Um,
Well, you have this ideal, don't you? Before you even before your child is even out into the world, you have this roadmap of what you want them to do, whether you admit it or not.
Yeah,
You
everyone
go,
does.
right, I want my child to go to university, and I want my child to play football, or my other child to do ballet, or whatever it is. And they're going to do the things that I show them and teach them. And I'm going to share my interests with them, and they're going to like that, and they're going to do it as well. And we'll have quality time together, and we're going to sit around we're going to sit around a table at meal times and eat pies. None of this is relevant anymore.
Yeah.
And that, you know, it's as soon as I understood that this ideal, this parenting ideal that uh was there, I probably wasn't, it
Mm.
wasn't maybe conscious, but it was certainly the back of my mind of what I wanted my kids to be like and how I wanted my kids to behave. Once I'd learned that actually that's not fair and it's
Yeah.
not realistic, that made it a lot easier for me, I think.
Was that an easy thing? Was that an easy place to come to, Mark, do you think? Or did that take a long time?
Oh man, we've all been through
Mm.
absolute torture to get here. To, like, all of us, you know, it doesn't matter
Yeah.
where you are in your journey, nothing's come easy. But I and I think it happens in hindsight when you look back and go,
Yeah.
oh, I've got through that bit. I've got through the really sticky bit. I mean, there are other sticky bits to come, I know that, but for that bit, that where I was really struggling, my relationship with Jay was really struggling.
Yeah.
And I knew that he had a much better relationship with his mum.
Okay.
And I know this because he told me.
Well, they do
I
that sometimes to us, don't they?
Yeah, I prefer mummy. It's like, okay, thanks. Um, but we've got through that. And now I've got a great relationship with him
Okay.
because so it works. The way that I recalibrated and the way that I reoriented the way that I parent
Yeah.
has got results. So
Yeah. And that's hard, I think, sometimes. I think sometimes people find that hard to make that flip or to do that we've talked before about having a pivot. How
mhm,
do I change? This isn't working. I've got to find another way. And
yeah.
I think personally that some people find that easier to do than others. I think there's probably reasons behind why people find it easier than others.
I think neurodivergent. I think parents of neurodivergent kids find it easier because we're so used to it.
Yeah.
Because you have to improvise all the time. You
Yeah.
know that you'll try and set a boundary and then go, oh, that's not working. I'm gonna just remove that boundary and try something different.
Yeah. Let's
Or
let's forget that one.
yeah, exactly. You're very used to it rather than going, this is the line in the sand and you don't cross that line, which is
Yeah.
how I was parented, and I think how a lot of neurotypical kids are parented
Mm,
because it works.
mm.
Generally, if you see the family as a hierarchy and everyone listens to the parents, and you know,
Yeah.
but that's not how things work in our households.
It doesn't, does it?
You're setting yourself up for failure if you do that.
And kind of when you're thinking back over when you started to become aware of things were different within your family,
Mhm.
did you pick that up very early? Is that kind of when the kids were very, very young, or did that kind of take a little while to realize?
I think it's all cumulative. I think for any parent of neurodivergent kids, there's rarely like this moment, this blinding flash of realization that, this is categorical proof. There are just a lot of cumulative things that
Yeah.
happen that they do. You go, that's another one in the questionable pile. And then you look back at it and go, oh yeah, that was obviously a
Yeah.
sign of neurodivergency. So this is the story that I kind of told in the talk that I did recently about rewriting the rule book for our neurodivergent kids. And I talk about like the first time I can remember something being different. And it was about 18 months old, maybe 2 months or 2 years old with Jay. And Tam and I would needed to wear him out a lot. He was just so much energy, this chaos energy that he seemed to have. So we'd take him to a park and run around with him, and it was fun. But we were serving a purpose. We wanted to wear him out, and at one point we're exhausted, so we sat down, and Jay just started walking off, and we watched him sort of walking off. And I turned to Tam and I went, "Watch this. He's going to realize we're not with him in a second." And he's gonna turn around, he's gonna realize we're not there, and he's gonna be really upset, and he'll come running back to us, because that's what neurotypical kids do. I've seen it before. You've seen them, when they panic, their parents are not there, and they run back to them. And I thought, he's gonna do this, and he kept walking, and we watched him, and he kept walking, and he was like, I don't know what he was intent on getting to, but he was definitely striding towards the horizon with a purpose, to the point that we basically had to, I shouted his name, he didn't respond. That's another sign, right? He wasn't
Yeah.
he wasn't responding to his name. I'm shouting his name, and eventually we just end up having to get up and run after him.
Yeah.
And I think, in terms of a metaphor for my life with Jay, that was pretty perfect, because
Oh,
we're always running after him. He's never coming towards us. And it's that's our role. Basically, let him lead the way, and we'll sort of clean up afterwards and make sure that there aren't any major obstacles in the way.
so, so when the diagnosis came in, Mark, for the kids and
Hmm.
maybe for Tam as well,
Hmm.
did that bring a change with it, or was the change happening before that?
I think that because diagnosis takes so
Yeah.
flipping long,
Yeah.
we already knew that Jay was autistic and ADHD.
Yeah.
Like we were sure of it. So really, that was just the bit of paper that you could point to and go, now can you make some accommodations? And also, I think the real change was that we could tell people, because we
Yeah.
were reluctant to share our concerns about his neurotype, um, with anyone while it was undiagnosed,
Where did that
rightly or
reluctance,
wrongly.
where did that come from, Mark?
I think because you don't want to feel like you're making it up, or you don't want to
Yeah.
feel like you're I don't know. Yeah, it would, but I definitely remember there were kind of whispered conversations. We spoke
Yeah.
about it a lot behind closed doors, but we didn't divulge anything to anyone close to us
Okay.
until we understood that he was autistic. Um, because I guess you don't know how people are going to react as
Mm.
well, and are we making it up? So I'm
Yeah.
sure we all have that, right? It's like all kids, have trouble getting their shoes on and responding to their name, right?
Yeah.
It's like, no, this is different. We're pretty sure this is different, but I'd quite like categorical proof before I tell people.
Yeah. And I think there was something similar in there for me when I was with my son, is that, well, one, even just you talking about your son walking off into the distance
Mm.
brings back memories from my son that I used to do that. I'm going now, and he used to go, okay.
Yeah,
And I go,
it's
I'm going to
like,
walk away, and I'd be walking away, and he'd be going in the opposite direction. And like you say, me suddenly realizing,
yeah, okay.
yeah,
There's only one
I'm
winner
going to
here, and it's
lose
not me.
this, and me legging it after him.
Yeah.
But also, but I didn't realize. He had a big mental health crash, and it
Mm.
wasn't until we went and had some support from some counselling, and somebody saying to me, "Do you think he could be autistic?" And I went, "No. Do you know what job I do?"
Yeah, really.
Yeah, completely. Hadn't seen it
So
at
you
all.
knew about autism,
Yeah, yeah. I was,
obviously, from your OT
yeah,
stuff.
working in it, working with lots of families, working with kids, and I didn't spot it.
That's interesting.
And what somebody was talking to me about afterwards was, I suppose, because I was working with kids, I'd used a lot of the strategies at home.
Hmm.
So I was manager. So life at home wasn't too
Yeah.
bad, but it was falling apart at school.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to have meltdowns and stuff like that, and I just kind of thought they were, he was just having a tricky time. I hadn't
Yeah.
really attached that to it. Could be he was autistic and having like sensory meltdowns and all sorts
Hmm.
of stuff. I hadn't made those links. Um, and it's really hard. And I suppose when we went for the diagnosis, I remember thinking, I don't want to tell anyone, because what if it's down to me and
Yeah, that
I'm the
is it,
problem?
isn't it? Yeah. I'm
I've
sorry, you're
caused
just a
this.
terrible parent.
Yes. And they're
It's
going
not
to come back
him.
and, yeah, they're going to come back and go, no, of course he's not autistic. This must be you.
Yeah.
And then that's where the worry came for me, I think, is not wanting to tell people, is that if it wasn't, then it had to be me. And I had made a
And you
big
don't want to
mess of
let
it all.
people know that.
Yeah, no, I'm not failing. And actually, what he is autistic, but that
Hmm.
there was a real worry for me around that. About,
Yeah. And then there's that moment when you get it confirmed, this diagnosis confirmed, of that relief, weirdly. Of like, oh,
yeah,
thank God.
yeah,
I was right. My instincts were right.
yeah,
And everything that I've been kind of understanding and implementing at this point in terms of different
yeah,
parenting strategies and stuff we're along the right lines, but at least you know what you're facing, until then you learn
Absolutely.
about
And I think
PDA and
I don't know whether you had something similar, Mark, because I had the initial relief and it came and I got the diagnosis, we got the piece of paper and it was a relief. And but then afterwards for me came immense sadness. And
yeah, 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 yeah.
and I wasn't expecting that. I thought I was waiting for this diagnosis because it was going to give us, access to EHCPs. It was going to give us
Hmm.
access to support at school. It's going to give us all these things, and it was a gateway to getting to things. We still have to fight
Hmm.
for it, and we know that. But actually, there was a real sadness that I went through afterwards, that caught me
Yeah,
off
no,
guard.
I had that as well. Because again, when you're expecting it, you're
Mm.
expecting it to come through, and you pretty much know.
Yeah,
But yeah, I remember having a long dark night of the soul,
yeah, yeah,
of just sitting there with a whiskey or several,
yeah,
and just going through that grief. I think like
yeah,
legitimate grief about you know your understanding that their life is going to be so much harder,
yeah,
and your life is going to be so much harder. It's secondary.
yeah,
I'm more concerned about him and how he finds his way in the world, and that you're sort of having to let go of all of these, as I say, these sort of ideals of how they're going to turn up out as children. This is all before I understood that it's fine. They just do their own
yeah,
thing, you know. Like
yeah,
actually, the problem is the way that you're perceiving how you're going to control their lives and set
yeah,
down the rails for them to run on. They're
yeah,
going to do things in their own way, and there's a joy to that. But
yeah.
obviously, at the time, it was yeah, it was really hard.
Yeah, it is. It's a hard, and I don't know whether parents talk about that bit enough. The bit about there is relief, and it is about
Hmm.
knowing, and it is, I wouldn't change him for the world, but there was a sadness in me that I thought, like you said, is going to be tough.
Yes.
We are in a neurotypical world, whether we like
Hmm.
it or not. But there's lots of people out there fighting to change that now, and I think awareness is better, acceptance is coming. Um, but it's slow.
Yes.
And we know things are going to be tricky for them. They don't like the school systems. They don't fit into the school systems a lot of the time. So life becomes difficult. And I think that's where a lot of that sadness sat for me was realizing actually, okay, if this is what it is, then this potentially is a long-term thing. And I've now got to support him through this. And how do we
Hmm.
get through this? And that's a tricky bit. That kind of leads me on, Mark, to kind of think about because we've talked before about families and neurodivergence
Hmm.
and the kind of the links there. And I think you
Yeah.
and I had a brief conversation before when we did your podcast.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about your neurodivergence?
I will. People keep trying to out me as neurodivergent. Like a lot of my guests have said, I think you're probably neurodivergent. I was like, I'm not sure. It's weird actually. So just for clarity, I identify as neurotypical.
Yeah,
However, that is undiagnosed.
yeah,
I am a self-diagnosed neurotypical. Um, in the like, I'm sure there may be some traits of ADHD or something like that, but I'm looking at the challenges that my kids face, or that Tam faces, or that my friends face that have neurodivergency. I've got nowhere near those sort
yeah,
of challenges, so it almost feels wrong for me to consider it, because
yeah,
I don't feel like that I have those challenges in the way that other people do.
yeah.
The episode of Neuro Shambles I've just recorded is called being the token neurotypical, um, where I talk to another self-diagnosed neurotypical in a neurodivergent household, and about the challenges of being the odd one out in your own home.
Yeah,
Because I do feel like the odd one out in my own home, and it's quite nice in our house that they are so sort of they view their neurodivergency as such a positive thing.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm almost mocked for not for
yeah.
not having it. I'm the weirdo.
And I suppose does that kind of does it feel like I suppose then Tam gets it because she can relate to it more than you kind of maybe feel that you do.
Um, so I think I think to a degree there's a lot of Tam seeing traits in India, for example. Like I would not have. So India's the most recent one that's diagnosed autistic,
Yeah.
and she definitely is she's been masking a lot, I think, at school, but
Yeah.
also I have a different connection with India because she's a lot more kind of tactile and I don't know, but Tam has always seen something in India that has made her go, I was like that when I was a
Oh,
girl,
okay.
when I was a child. Sorry, don't say girl because Tam is non-binary.
Yeah.
When I was a child, that was how I responded in those social situations.
Yeah.
So, and I was just thinking that India's just maybe a bit shy sometimes with new groups, but Tam recognized something and just kind of kept their eye on it a little bit and made
Yeah.
sure that we were sort of on top of it and logging behaviors that seemed to be consistent with, autism and Tam was right, and I wouldn't have picked that up. So I think
Okay.
there is definitely a sixth sense there where neurodivergence can spot other neurodivergence.
My son talks about that. He's got a
Yeah,
radar, he says. He can pick out who he thinks is goes through
I
my
think I
family.
think I'm pretty good at it now as well.
Are you?
So maybe that means I am neurodivergent. I'm not.
I'm not going to say anything, Mark. I'm not going to say a
Do
word.
you think I was? I don't. I mean,
I'm not
like
going
I
to
say,
diagnose on a podcast.
I just feel like it's
Do you know what I think
I feel
sometimes
like
as
I'd be
well?
cheating if
Yeah,
I
but I
was
think,
claiming to be part of a group without actually going through any of the tribulations that
yeah.
they're going through.
I suppose sometimes people think actually I don't even need to know. I just know that
Hmm.
I've got these bits about my personality and this is how I am and I'm
Hmm.
okay with that. And actually it hasn't caused me, I've managed to kind of get through life and it hasn't caused me trauma and stress
Yeah,
and that's okay. And I think probably of our, I don't know how old you are, Mark, obviously very young, but of our
obviously.
generation, yeah, our generation, I'm just diagnosed dyslexic, but very late in my
Hmm.
40s. And I flew under the radar at school because I wasn't dyslexic enough, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, 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 yeah.
My memories of people being dyslexic at school were them needing to be taken out of the classroom. They
Hmm.
couldn't read and write. They were very, very disabled by their dyslexia. I was a girl, so I had lots of coping strategies. I had parents that were teachers, so I flew under a radar.
Yeah, because they didn't know what they were looking for either.
No, and it's
Because
the
yeah.
nuances now I think that are picked up so much better
Hmm.
than they were when we were young.
Yeah, because people know so much more about it, and
Yeah.
people talk so much more about it. So
Yeah,
obviously that
yeah,
awareness is there,
yeah,
which it wasn't before. And I think that there's way, way more neurodivergent people in the world, than we understood before.
yeah.
Um, and really, it's about whether I think in terms of diagnosis, it's whether you need accommodations or not, um,
Yes.
to get a diagnosis.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are self-diagnosed
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
don't
And
need
that's
the bit of
okay.
paper. They're like, you
Yeah.
know what? I think I'm probably autistic, and therefore I'm understanding a bit more about my neurotype and the things that I find challenging and the environments that I find overwhelming, and so I will take steps myself to remove myself from that. I don't need to go
Mm.
to this leaving party at work because it's going to be too much for
Yeah.
me. So I'll do things in my way. Um, and it's really about if you understand that there might be neurodivergency at play, then do the research and work out how that fits within your profile
Yeah.
and make those accommodations for yourself if you can.
Yeah. You see, my son's again got the theory on this that actually the um the neurotypicals are the ones in the minority. Actually, and they just don't realise it yet. He thinks actually the normal is to be
I like it.
neurodivergent.
I mean, it's entirely possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's going to be an uprising. I feel it. The
Yeah.
neurodivergent uprising. If only executive function was better,
Yeah. Yeah.
so they could mobilize.
Oh, Mark, if you could go back kind of to your younger self as a
Hmm.
parent,
Hmm.
if you got one piece, so you could go back, would you give yourself one piece of advice? What would you say to yourself?
Um, I think it's back to that. Um, it's back to the question about not seeing your child's behavior as defiance.
Yeah.
I think that was quite a bumpy start to my relationship with Jay. Is seeing him as naughty,
Did that start
and
very early, Mark, when he was very young?
Yeah, because he didn't, like I say,
Yeah.
he didn't respond to his name, or he'd be
Mm.
jumping on the sofa and you'd tell him to get down and then he
Yeah,
wouldn't get
yeah,
down. So you'd move him and then, leave the room and he'd be back on it again. And you see that as naughtiness or defiance or whatever it is. Actually, no, it's just a sensory input that he needs right
yeah,
now because he's overwhelmed by something else, So it's not seeing that, just questioning that. I think just questioning where the behavior is coming from and not just assuming it's because you've birthed the hooligan. Which is, I think, where my starting point.
yeah,
Having said that, I'm not there now, and I've evolved from that. I've learned from that, and
yeah,
so maybe without that, then I wouldn't be where I am now, I think.
yeah, yeah. It was a process you kind of almost had to go
Hmm.
through. Yeah. We're just coming towards the end, Mark, and I thought I'd turn the tables on you a bit because I know you have a definite outcome, you have a definite structure to your
I
podcast, which
do.
I have experienced and also I've listened to as well. But I wondered whether it might be interesting for people to hear some of that if I asked you but some similar questions.
Okay.
So I've got a couple here, which was, can you tell us about your best parenting moment? So a time when you felt like you were winning.
This is.
Has there been one?
I'm trying to think of like one where, it's. There's not one single one that I feel like, and I know this sounds really, really bad. This sounds a bit. I can't say the. I don't want to say the word wanky,
Too late.
but every day in our house at the moment in
Yeah,
the home, it feels like I'm winning because my kids are in a place at home where they are safe and
yeah,
they are regulated and they know what they need to do if they're not regulated. So our home is a really happy home. Like everyone laughs and just does silly jokes and can stim and make noise and and do whatever they need to do to regulate.
yeah,
And it genuinely feels like a happy home. And to the point that you start to question, are they really autistic?
yeah,
Like, is this the thing? And then when we leave the house, you
yeah,
see the effect of that. You see them in a public place or you see them at school. And you realize, no, they really struggle in that environment.
yeah,
And you get a very different version of them there. And uh, so when I see them unmasked in our house, that for me is the huge win. Like that's because
that's the ultimate win. It
it
almost
it
sounds
is,
like, isn't
and
it?
yeah, it is for me certainly, and Tam as well. We recognise that our house is a safe place for them,
Yeah,
and they love it, and they can be their authentic selves, which is great. I just wish I could transplant that to the outside world. I wish I could make those accommodations everywhere, or explain to other people, look, just let them do what they do.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But obviously, I can't control the world. That would be crazy. So all I can control is the environment that they grow up in here, and the fact that it's a place that they can unmask is, really important.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And do you know what? You thrown me off with that because I thought, I'm sure I know Mark is going to come with
They're going to
some,
come. There'll be
there's
an
going to be a
anecdote.
story about this that will be funny. And actually, that was really, really to the point, and I think really important for people to hear that actually that you are winning, and your home is the place that's happening,
Hmm.
and that must be a really nice place to be and a good feeling to have.
It's the only bit I can control, really, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah. Okay, next one. A head in hands moment, Mark. One of your not maybe one of your not your finest moment. Does that come
Oh,
from a TV show? Not my finest moment.
I don't know.
It rings a
Maybe.
bell. I remember weird things like that, little clips out of movies and stuff.
There's one that springs to mind where we're sort of hardwired to advocate for our kids
Yes.
in public. So, when you sense judgment from other people,
Yeah.
you will, you'll step in and explain, oh, my child's autistic, and you don't understand their behavior, and however you do it, right? And but sometimes they are just being assholes.
That goes for parents too, I think, sometimes too,
It
isn't it?
does,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And I had this moment, um, where we were at a National Trust property. This was in the early days where we were kind of we thought we'd try that, and my kids would just run amok. And you could see other people generally appalled by just the noise and they're not being badly behaved. They're just not, they're not treating it with the reverence that National Trust believe it,
Yeah, I
it
was going to
deserves.
say, National Trust has got a level, hasn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, and we are definitely way below that level. Like they've assumed that we've sneaked in a back entrance or something.
Someone
Um,
check their tickets quick.
yeah, exactly. And so Otto was way ahead of me, and I saw him pick up a stone and he threw it into some bushes. Right. He's quite sporty. He likes, throwing stuff.
Yeah.
And I I saw a woman go over to him and start telling him off, which, is like already you're like, how dare you tell my child off? And
Yeah.
also you don't understand, what you're dealing with here. He's autistic. And, so I stride over there and I'm not proud of it. And I went, I'll parent my own child, thank you very much. Right, yeah, exactly. And then she turned to me and went, he just threw a stone at a duck.
Oh,
I was like, oh no. Oh,
how
all
did you
moral high
backtrack out of
ground.
that one?
All moral high ground just evaporated at that point. I was like, oh God, now I look awful. And she's now going, well, I can see where he gets it from.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, oh, it was terrible. And so but obviously I see where it came from Otto, right? Because Otto has, he's seen a stone, he's picked up a stone, he's like, oh, I'm good at throwing, I'm quite good at throwing stuff and hitting stuff with this stone. He sees the duck, it's a moving target. He doesn't make the connection that that duck has feelings and that it's a sentient being. He's just like, oh, it's moving, I'll see if I can get it. Look, I got it. So he's happy with himself. All of a sudden he gets told off, and then yeah, so basically I just sort of marched Otto away. I didn't even apologize to the woman. I just
Just
was
take
just
me
so
out of it.
mortified. Yeah, I was mortified. I just, I found the back entrance to the National Trust property and
Where you came in, we're going to
sneaked
leave
out the
that
way we
way.
came. Yeah, it was not a fine moment.
Oh,
Sometimes I'm in the wrong as well.
as parents, it happens. It
Yeah, yeah.
happens. Just kind of coming towards the end mark and thinking about if there is a parent out there that's struggling at the moment, and what you've been through it, I'm sure, and I've been through it as well. That we're finding things really tricky at the moment. If you got one piece of advice you'd give them at the moment, what would you say that might help them through it at the moment?
I would think probably the best piece of advice is to find that neurodivergent parenting community. And I think probably every one of your guests says that, but it is the most important because they get it. They understand it. I remember going to a meeting, like a physical meetup of a local neurodivergent parenting community who were amazing. They're called Mascot and they're based in East Sussex and they do a bit of West Sussex as well. And we went along to the first event, and it was so refreshing to be able to let my kids be my kids and not feel judged by other people, and for and to almost being able to unmask as a parent of
Yeah.
going, I don't have to try and control their behavior
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
people get it. And I remember that we went on, because they go on camping trips and stuff as well, and it's really nice for that kind of thing because again everyone understands it. And I remember once that some one child came up to our tent and he was just like just unleashing his special interest on me, like really close to my face, and I was totally fine with it. And obviously I was talking to him and engaging with him, and his mum came over and she just went, it's so nice that you can do that,
Yeah.
because usually people walk away or they think it's weird. It's like, I get it. I
Yeah.
get it. And there's that acceptance there. And so often when you're first starting out on this journey, you feel like you're outside of society, outside of civilized society,
Hmm.
that you're not part of the in crowd. So finding another group of people who get it and who understand where it comes from and don't judge is hugely important, I think.
Hugely, hugely. And that sounds like a really great service. And I think what we can do is put that in the show notes. So
Mhm.
if people are interested in that, it's in person, that is it, or Do they do
They
anything
did. They
online?
did input. They do in-person meetups. It's not online predominantly, and that's
Okay.
where I first put my post of I need help with my child,
Oh,
and
was it?
yeah.
Okay.
But they have been incredible, an incredible resource, and there's just so many knowledgeable parents who are so keen because I find that parents of neurodivergent kids want to help other people
Yeah.
out because we've been through those moments of doubt and those moments of like I don't know what to do
Yeah.
with this.
Yeah.
Um, and once you've been through it, you kind of want to go, yeah, we've been there.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And then
Got
you
ya.
sort of help people through the sticky bit.
Yeah. What was the name of it again, Mark?
They're called Mascot.
Mascot. Okay.
Yeah,
We'll
and
put those details in.
yeah, they're amazing. But there are loads of these kind of online communities, I
Yeah.
think, all around the country that do
Yeah.
stuff. I've just the talk that I did recently was at the Bristol Parent Carers Forum, who are a similar, organization that do that sort of thing, and they organized a conference, which was amazing. So
Mm,
there's lots of this out there. You just need to tap into your local one and really
yeah.
make the most of the resources on offer.
Yeah. And that leads me almost seamlessly. It's like you've done podcasts before, Mark, um, into just kind of a bit about you and kind of what's going on for you at the moment. Because obviously there is the podcast around which you can find on the usual kind of platforms,
On
which is
all of them, all of the platforms. It's
all of the platforms.
Neuroshambles. I'm on the socials as well, on Instagram at Neuroshambles, Facebook at Neuroshambles, Threads at Neuroshambles, and TikTok at Neuroshambles Pod.
Okay. Oh, it's got to be
Someone
different
had
then.
taken Neuroshambles. I don't know who did that.
Oh,
Terrible.
so
But
we'll make
yeah.
sure all of those are in the show notes as well. But also kind of just linking in there with the fact that you do go now do talks.
Well, I was invited to do a talk, so I was
How
like, okay,
exciting.
I'll accept that, and I'll go. Sometimes you just go, I'll say yes, and then
Yeah.
I'll have to write a talk, won't I?
Yeah.
Um, and so I did, and then the month before the talk, I was like, I really need to write a talk now. And I did it, and it
Okay.
was like I enjoyed it so much. It was really, yeah, I was really pleased with how well it was received, and it was a really fun one to do because I used to do stand up, so
Yeah. Yeah.
just tapping into the
Yeah.
performance vibe was really nice to be able to do that and sort of to share my story but do it in a humorous way. And
Yeah.
so I'm quite keen to do more of that actually because it
Yeah.
was it was really fun and it went down pretty well, so I'm
Do you
hoping
miss the
that
stand up, Mark?
yeah, in a way, I missed the performance, yeah, but there's a lot of admin around stand up.
Is there?
That is like booking gigs and traveling to gigs because you see the comedian on stage, you don't
Yeah.
realize that they've traveled 4 hours to get there, then they've got to do the 4 hour journey home to get back at 2 in the morning and then maybe start a day job the next day. It's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
And you've got to be match fit. You've got to do it, regularly. So I really liked it. I do miss the performance side of things, but maybe that's why Neuroshambles is providing me with so much joy as well because
Yeah.
there is that element of creativity and putting something out there.
Yeah. Well, that just leaves me to say, Mark, thank you ever so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Lovely to chat with you today.
Yeah, likewise. I really enjoyed this. Thank you.
And obviously, we'll put all of Mark's links in the show notes. That'll all be there, and the group that he talked about as well on the Facebook group. We'll pop that in the show notes as well.
We'll put the explosive child in there as well.
Oh yes, thank you very much. We'll put that in there as well, so people can find that what we were talking about earlier. Yeah, and thank you very much. Lovely
No,
to see
thank
you,
you.
Mark.
All
Take
right.
care.
Thanks, Liz. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Whether you were walking the dog, folding laundry, or just hiding in the toilet for 5 minutes peace, and there's no judgment here. I'm glad you chose to spend your time with me today. If you're a parent or a carer of a child with additional needs and you're feeling overwhelmed, burnt out, or just like you need a better backup, I've got you and I'm here to help you find a way through the tricky stuff. Like the moments when you feel like you might just run out of steam, so that you can be the parent that you want to be and take care of yourself too. If you want to connect, you can find me on all the social media sites, Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn, where I share more tips, resources and real talk. And hey, if this episode made you laugh out loud or feel a little less alone, why not buy me a coffee? Just click the link in the show notes. It's a small way to show your support and keep this podcast going. Take care of yourself today. You're doing an amazing job.